Over the years, almost every major Sonic character has made their way into SRB2 through a high-profile, high-quality release. Barring one, Rouge the Bat. These had mods, sure, but many of them were ports from SRB2 v2.1, and that's just not a quality level that will cut it in the modern day. For 6 years, Rouge fans had to take the hit, their best boss Bat left in the dark days of version past, until January of 2026, when finally, after all of that time, they opened the SRB2 Message Boards to see not one, but 2 Rouge mods on the front page. After 6 years of effective silence, YappyFace and Garion had ended up releasing their Rouge mods within 4 days of one another, so I had to turn to my Discord server for advice on whose to pick. At the time, Garion's Sneaky Rouge was the only one who had custom sprites, but YappyFace had a more unique moveset, so it was a close call. At least until YappyFace also began to use those custom sprites, hence why we're going with their incarnation. This is not merely a Knuckles reskin, but rather a completely new take on the Explorer archetype, and a very enjoyable one at that. Instead of basing their Rouge on any one source, YappyFace has instead incorporated elements from several pieces of media. The overall game plan may be from Adventure 2, debatably, but the finer details often take more from heroes, and there are abilities based on those from battle and to wider character, anime, comics, sorts and stories, that sort of thing. C is surprisingly not that adept at getting to higher places, or at least lacks the easy climb and glide combo that would allow her to do so effortlessly. Height is instead gained by combining the slide kick with the fly burst, as hitting a wall with the former sends Rouge into the sky, giving the latter the space to do its best work. It's not as versatile, predictable, or reliable as a simple climb, but that's a worthy trade for finding some new way to use the environment to your advantage. It made me look at levels in a new way, as little bumps and rocks could be just as valuable as larger value walls, and I'd often have to stagger my escalations in a way that would usually be unnecessary. I was less certain of my success, but more aware of what I was doing, not merely playing as if on autopilot, as I find myself doing with more and more characters today. The other benefit to a lessened ability to ascend is in the trade-off made. To compensate for the decision, Rouge has a powerful input string, drill dive, slide kick, jump, that maintains a huge amount of momentum. Repeating it in quick succession will allow her to reach very high speeds, which can even be continued into standard movement with little difficulty. It wasn't what I expected from the character, seeing as speed is not Rouge's forte usually, but it's simple and powerful enough to execute that it very quickly became a valued part of the moveset. You can even combo into or out of the flight input string, meaning that with a little practice, you can essentially remove any downtime from gameplay. That's my preference. Running around at top speed with nothing to do gets boring quickly, but then there are also characters where too much has to be juggled before they reach any degree of proficiency. Having a character that has the apparatus for constant improvement, but then doesn't fall apart if you mistime something, is what ensures the greatest possible enjoyment for the greatest possible audience. Balancing speed and verticality is something Rouge does really well, although she is still definitely an explorer, and the fact that both must be maintained through unorthodox strategy keeps her feeling fresh and original. Unfortunately, her final suite of abilities do little to benefit either form of movement, especially when they're limited in the way that they are. When Rouge gets a hold of all 7 Chaos Emeralds, she doesn't unlock a super form, instead gaining access to 3 Emerald abilities, These are the Soundwave, Bomb Drop, and Smoke Bomb, performed with custom 1, 2, and 3 respectively, and also listed from best to worst. The Soundwave acts as a projectile, targeting enemies and bouncing off walls to destroy walls and spikes. The Bomb Drop releases a bomb, dealing area damage and launching Rouge into the air. The Smoke Bomb gives Rouge temporary invincibility to all obstacles. The usage of all three is linked to a new shared cooldown, where each ability uses a single charge and begins a variable cooldown, supposedly geared to make more powerful abilities usable less often. I'm not a huge fan of these. Firstly, making them tied to Emerald Collection is an interesting concept, especially for a Jewel Thief, but it's not executed very well. I'd prefer a more natural progression system, where new abilities are unlocked at specific collection milestones. Making all three abilities unlock only when you collect all 7 emeralds means that it takes too long to unlock them when on a fresh save file. The other problem with linking them to complete Emerald Collection is the inevitable way that they are compared to a super form, which they replace. If they in some way increased your agility, the variety would actually make the comparison favourable, but their utility in that field is limited at best. They mostly benefit you in combat, but that is a small niche in SRB2, and I think that'll limit the number of people who will want to go to the effort to unlock them. Superforms have an innate appeal that make people want to work for them, but 3 random abilities? I'm not so sure. All of this is then further exacerbated by the fact that the abilities end up not being all too good. Soundwave is alright, but Bomb Drop has a cooldown that is just a little too long for how good it actually is. Smoke Bomb is then so bad that I struggle to understand why it was even considered for the longest cooldown. The invincibility effect lasts for so little time that I can only imagine it was intended as an untraditional block button. It wouldn't be so bad with a shorter cooldown, but the fact that it stops you from using either of the cheaper, better options acts as a clear incentive not to use it. In fact, I don't really understand why there's a cooldown system. This is my equivalent of a superform, the reward for taking the time to collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds. Why can't I use these abilities as often as I want? This isn't the place for balance, it's the place to give me fun tools to break levels and blitz the game. These just don't cut it for that. Outside of this disappointing suite of emerald abilities, however, Rouge is a strong explorer. Not necessarily in terms of comparative power levels, as he actually comes out poorly in that. Rather, her unique game plan means I don't play her like anyone else. A lot of explorers end up feeling like Knuckles clones, and Rouge, with her unique strings and way of getting around, absolutely does not. It's a strong conceptual showcase from a developer who seemingly hasn't made anything before, because as much as the individual abilities are simple, some may even be ripped from this open assets pack, they fit together quite coherently, and nothing feels redundant or mistuned. Gameplay wise, this is a good first impression from YappyFace. Rouge's sprites can be attributed to Garian's Sneaky Rouge mod, which can attribute them to SA2 Blast, which can attribute them to Crispy, who was actually a member of Sonic Team Jr. He's best known for Pointy Sonic and Fluffy Tails, a mod best known for the quality of the visuals, and his Rouge sprites are a major improvement over anything anyone was using beforehand. The overall effect is pretty convincing, as Crispy is quite good at replicating the SRB2 art style, unsurprising considering aforementioned memberships. They aren't his best work though. I think the head is too spherical due to the size and placement of the ears being slightly off, and I'm not sure why her wings have been made separate objects, as they now don't rotate with her back properly. I have a couple of awkward moments where her wings are poking out from the side of her body, and it looks bad. An improvement over the original sprites, ripped as they were from Sonic Battle, but not as good as they could be. I do appreciate the inclusion of voice lines though. It's something more mods to do. In my eyes, YappyFace has finally managed to make the definitive Rouge mod, paying off our years of patience. It's not technically the most accurate to any one official incarnation, see Garian's Sneaky Rouge if that's more your wish, but it's a solid amalgam of parts from several of them, to the mod's overall benefit. My main criticism is the way that the Emerald abilities are unlocked, as they do not live up to the effort a person without access to Pandora's box would need to undergo for them. But I've explained how that experience could be improved while remaining in the spirit of being a jewel thief. She's enjoyable, and I recommend you try her out if you've grown tired of the usual Explorer playstyle. I've left a link in the description to avoid confusion with Garian's mod. If you enjoyed this review, please go ahead and give me your request for the next mod under the spotlight. I haven't got any others lined up at the moment, and I'm curious who the community is currently talking about. For now though, I hope you enjoyed the video, tune in next time, and ciao.